Imagine an invisible army, guardians working tirelessly beneath the waves, gathering data that really influences the survival of our planet's most vibrant, but also, vulnerable underwater cities. Today, we're uncovering their mission. We're diving into the critical world of marine ecosystem monitoring. We've got a detailed look at coral reef marine protected areas from the IUCN, and also the really practical hands-on Reef Check California manual. That's the one that guides citizen scientists in kelp forest monitoring. So for our audience who are already pretty aware of the huge pressures on our oceans, what's the kind of hidden power of monitoring, beyond just tracking decline? How does it really transform our approach to conservation?
Well, what's fascinating here, maybe not always obvious, is just how intertwined the health of these ecosystems is with human well-being.
Yeah.
Our sources really highlight that coral reefs and kelp forests provide these incredible ecosystem services. They're not just beautiful, right?
Right.
They're silent economic powerhouses. They're like natural infrastructure providing billions in services. We're talking food production, waste assimilation, protecting shorelines from storms, regulating climate, generating vital tourism income.
Wow.
It's this complex, interconnected system we really can't afford to lose. But as you said, these vital systems are under immense pressure. Our sources point to the big threats: overfishing, pollution, coastal development, and also the increasing frequency and severity of diseases, predator outbreaks, plus those global issues like climate change causing warming waters and ocean acidification. It's a lot.
It really is. So with all these pressures, what's maybe the single most challenging piece of information managers lack if they don't have proper monitoring? And how does getting that data really empower them?
I think it's knowing if their efforts are actually making a difference. Monitoring helps managers understand, natural ups and downs versus long-term trends. It lets them interpret the real impacts of big disturbances, like a heat wave or human activities. But crucially, it tells them if management changes are actually working. It allows for that adaptive, responsive action. Without that feedback loop, they're essentially flying blind.
Now, when we think of scientific monitoring, we often picture labs, professional scientists. But our sources bring in this other powerful force: citizen scientists. It's incredible that everyday people can contribute to such complex science. Beyond just collecting data points, what's the sort of broader, maybe less obvious impact of involving the public like this?
Yeah, that raises a really important point about scale and public engagement. The Reef Check California program is just a brilliant example here. It trains regular divers as citizen scientists to collect standardized data on California's kelp forests and rocky reefs. And their goals are dual, really. One is to produce usable, high-quality data for management and conservation. That's key. But equally important is involving the public. This helps foster an educated community, one that actively supports science-based management and, ocean stewardship. And by involving volunteers, they can massively increase the data collection effort over huge areas and long time periods. That's often incredibly difficult and expensive for traditional science alone. It's a real game changer for getting those long-term data sets.
That's a massive expansion of scientific capacity, like you say. So if someone listening maybe wanted to join this invisible army, what does it actually take? This isn't just a casual dip in the ocean, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's rigorous. You need your dive certification, of course, but also a minimum of 30 logged lifetime dives.
And 15 of those need to be in temperate, colder waters like California's. Plus, there's annual recertification.
Wow.
The training itself is comprehensive. You're talking classroom work, pool sessions, field sessions, and tests to ensure the data quality is absolutely impeccable. They have to know their fish, their invertebrates, understand the subtle differences in habitat types. It's serious stuff.
Okay, so given how much is at stake and the clear dedication of these citizen scientists, the question then becomes, how exactly do they turn that passion into precise, usable data down there? It sounds like there's a real art and science to getting it right underwater.
It truly is. I mean, scientific surveys, they aim to characterize the environment through samples, right? You can't count everything. A full census underwater is just unrealistic. So the core principle, it really comes down to balancing precision that's getting consistent results every time you measure.
Right, repeatability, exactly. And accuracy, making sure those results truly reflect what's actually there in the real world. Imagine surveying the same reef twice. Precision means getting similar numbers each time. But accuracy means those numbers truly reflect the number of fish or the amount of coral that's really there.
No, okay.
It's a fundamental challenge in all field science, and maybe even more so underwater with currents and visibility and everything else.
Okay. So with that crucial context about precision and accuracy, let's actually descend into the technical side.
Right.
What are the actual tools and techniques they're using down there to measure and quantify what's happening?
Right, the methods. Well, our sources highlight several key ones. For both coral reefs and kelp forests, transects are absolutely fundamental.
Transects.
Think of it like an underwater measuring tape, basically. A line or a strip along which you conduct your survey. Reef Check California, for instance, uses band transects. That's essentially a continuous strip, maybe a meter or two wide,
Right.
where they count everything, specified fish, invertebrates, kelp, within that band.
Yeah.
And then, for understanding the reef's structure, the habitat itself, they use Uniform Point Contact Transects, or UPC. With UPC, they record what's directly beneath specific, evenly spaced points along that transect line. Is it rock, sand, algae? Which type of coral? Gives them a detailed snapshot of the substrate and cover.
So it's really holistic, not just counting the creatures, but getting a deep dive into the very fabric of their environment, understanding their homes down to the substrate. What about coral reefs specifically? Are the methods similar?
Broadly similar, yes, but with some specific focuses. For coral reefs, ecological monitoring typically involves baseline surveys of the corals themselves and the fish populations. These are repeated maybe every 1 to 3 years. They also use belt transects, similar to band transects, and quadrats, those square frames you lay down for counting things within a specific area.
Oh, I've seen those.
And increasingly, video monitoring is used. Technology is getting better, allowing for more efficient surveys sometimes. Plus, for fisheries management, there are modified counting methods needed for species that are large or really mobile or maybe cryptic and hiding. And specialized methods are crucial for monitoring spawning aggregations, those times and places where fish gather to reproduce. Super important for understanding population health.
And it's not just about the biology, is it? You mentioned human well-being earlier. What about the people connected to these ecosystems? How do they monitor that?
That's a really vital point and something the IUCN source stresses. The development of rapid socioeconomic monitoring is seen as a more recent but crucial need.
Rapid socioeconomic,
Oh,
okay.
think about it. You can't really manage an area effectively if you don't understand the human communities who depend on it or impact it. So these rapid surveys, things like household interviews, focus groups, just direct observations, they quickly give managers a human perspective. How are communities impacted by changes? How do they interact with the marine resources?
Things that might get missed in purely biological surveys.
Exactly. It fills a critical gap. The GCRMN, the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, even published a specific manual just for this.
Wow. This sounds like an enormous amount of data being generated, biological, socioeconomic. Once they've gathered all this, how do these organizations actually manage it? That must be a monumental task in itself.
Oh, absolutely. Data storage, analysis, and making it accessible are critical steps. And the IUCN source really emphasizes budgeting for this upfront. It can't be an afterthought.
Good point.
Permanent archiving is strongly recommended. Things like ReefBase, which archives global coral reef data, ensure that data isn't lost, that there's continuity. And Reef Check California, for their part, makes its data freely available online through their Global Reef Tracker database. That's a fantastic resource for researchers, managers, and even just the interested public.
Transparency, that's great. Okay, this is where it gets really compelling for me. All this meticulous data collection, it leads to crucial insights, right? Revealing these often dramatic, sometimes surprising changes happening. What are some of the most powerful discoveries that have emerged from this monitoring work?
Yeah, this is where you really see the value. If we connect monitoring to the bigger picture, it reveals some dramatic changes and direct impacts. For instance, in the Indian Ocean, they did socioeconomic assessments after that huge 1998 coral bleaching event.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Devastating.
It was. And they found something quite surprising. While tourists complain more about high prices, that was 37%, than about dead corals, only 14%. The
Interesting.
striking 80% of those who are aware of the bleaching said it would affect their decision to visit again. And some tourists indicated they'd be willing to pay significant extra, like almost $100 in Seychelles for access to healthier reefs.
Oh, that puts a real economic value on it. It really highlights the often underestimated economic clout of healthy reefs, even if tourists aren't always explicitly complaining about reef health.
That's a powerful point about perception versus underlying value. What about direct impacts on marine life itself and how monitoring helped managers respond quickly?
Okay, great examples here. In American Samoa, monitoring fishing catches and fish populations directly led to an immediate ban on a really destructive nighttime scuba fishery. And what's interesting is this happened even before they had all the final quantitative data fully analyzed. They acted decisively, precautionarily, based on the early monitoring indicators.
That's impressive. Quick action.
Very. And in Komodo National Park in Indonesia, monitoring showed live hard coral cover actually increasing from about 15% up to 24% after they started routine patrols that decreased illegal blast fishing.
So a clear, measurable success story from direct intervention proven by the monitoring.
Exactly. Proof that management works.
Those are fantastic examples of quick responses. What about the slower, long-term changes, like those driven by climate change? Is monitoring revealing any, I don't know, glimmers of hope or resilience amidst all the challenges?
Absolutely, and that's crucial too. So the Seychelles, for instance, their monitoring measured local sea surface warming at about 0.27 degrees Celsius per year over a decade.
That's fast warming.
It is. And it showed them hitting a coral bleaching threshold around 29 degrees Celsius. That's vital information. But fascinatingly, the monitoring also identified specific coral populations that were more resilient to this heat.
Oh, interesting.
These warrant special protection because they could be key sources for future larvae, helping reefs recover. It gives a blueprint for targeted conservation, protecting the strongholds, and another remarkable finding from Seychelles when they actively controlled populations of black-spined sea urchins.
The ones that can graze down young corals.
Yeah, precisely. Controlling them doubled the recruitment. That's the successful settlement and growth of key branching corals like Acropora and Poecilopora, the really important reef builders.
Wow, doubled. That's a profound aha moment, isn't it? Showing proactive management can have such a direct, positive impact on recovery.
It really is. It shows we aren't helpless. Targeted actions based on monitoring can work.
That's genuinely inspiring to hear. Okay, shifting oceans, what about the California kelp forests? What have those dedicated Reef Check citizen scientists revealed about their health?
Well, the Reef Check California data has been absolutely pivotal in documenting some major ecological shifts there. Tragically, it documented the massive decline of sunflower sea stars due to that sea star wasting disease.
Right, that was widespread.
Huge impact. And that decline, combined with warm ocean conditions, led to an explosion more than a 100-fold increase in purple sea urchin populations in some areas.
Urchins eat kelp, right?
They graze it down completely. And the result was the near-total disappearance of kelp forests in Sonoma and Mendocino counties. It's a stark example of a trophic cascade triggered by multiple pressures, all captured by the monitoring data.
A 100-fold increase. That's a dramatic ecological shift. What other trends has the Reef Check data captured in California?
They've documented significant range expansions of species, likely due to warming waters. Things like the crowned urchin showing up over 300 kilometers north of its historic range.
Wow.
And new fish species appearing, like the largemouth blenny spreading into Southern California. They also track invasive species, like the seaweed Sargassum horneri. And critically, this long-term data directly informed management decisions, like the tough but necessary closure of the recreational red abalone fishery north of San Francisco back in 2018 because the populations had collapsed. The data showed it had to be done.
So all this data, all these insights, these sometimes startling discoveries, what does it all mean for how we actually manage these precious marine environments? What's the ultimate impact of all this meticulous work on the ground, or rather underwater?
It's utterly foundational. The data directly informs management decisions day-to-day and long-term. Everything from setting pollution trigger levels during coastal construction like they did in Nelly Bay, Australia, using monitoring to know when things get too murky for corals, to supporting the actual establishment and then measuring the effectiveness of marine protected areas.
Yeah.
It gives managers the hard evidence they need to make tough calls and justify them.
Like the California MPA network you mentioned.
Precisely. The Marine Life Protection Act in California led to that network of 124 MPAs. It massively increased protected waters from less than 3% in 1999 up to over 16% by 2012.
That's a big jump.
Huge. And Reef Check California data was integral, first in helping establish the baselines before protection started, and now in continuing to monitor their long-term effectiveness. Are they working? The data tells us. Similarly, you look at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. They've used monitoring data extensively to, well, empower informed debate about climate change impacts, which is not always easy.
No kidding.
And to really focus their management efforts on maximizing reef resilience. That means protecting biodiversity hotspots, improving water quality, ensuring sustainable fisheries, all guided by what the monitoring tells them is most critical.
It really sounds like monitoring isn't just about collecting numbers in a vacuum. It's about actively building a better, more resilient future for these ecosystems.